everyone, meet Kevin here with good news and bad news on the next rounds of stimulus and the future stimulus package. We actually have 3 sets of good news today to outweigh some of the usual negativity, which, let me tell you, there is no shortage of negativity on YouTube regarding stimulus. Fortunately, there's also no shortage of 2 free stocks with Webull. Deposit $100 and get 2 free stocks worth up to $1,400 in the link down below. Good news number 1, a bill with promise for solving the $600 unemployment extension was just introduced in the Senate, which the Senate is where we want to hear about proposals right now because right now they have control. Of course, certainly they can't get anything through without the House, but the House seems poised to pass some sort of solution, so seeing new potential solutions in the Senate is good news. Remember, the current $600 per week boost effectively expires on July 25th, which is in just 24 days. This is bad. If you're an investor, it's bad for the stock market. If you're a landlord, it's bad for you as a landlord. And if you are somebody unemployed, it's also bad for you to lose that $600 boost. The HEROES Act, which was already passed by the House, would unconditionally extend this boost through January 31st and possibly as long as March 31st. However, now we have the American Workforce Rescue Act, and it was just introduced by Democrat Charles Schumer in the Senate. He's the leader of the Senate. He's kind of like the Mitch McConnell in the Senate, except he's the Democrat version of Mitch McConnell, although I don't want to say they're copy and pastes of each other. They're obviously different. Anyway, this act would extend the $600 per week of unemployment in actually a unique way, in a way that I kind of think is kind of good. And this is why I think this is good news to see this kind of thinking, and we've been talking about escalators like this for a while, and now we finally see it. Here it is. Until the 3-month average of unemployment falls below 11%, the $600 boost will remain extended. And this is potentially good news. Originally, the Federal Reserve thought that unemployment would fall below 10% by the end of the year. But now expectations are that unemployment might stay above 10% through next year as companies realize, maybe we didn't need that many employees, which actually means that this act has the potential of extending unemployment longer than the HEROES Act would. It's all dependent on what that unemployment rate is. For every 1 percentage point that the unemployment rate drops, the unemployment benefit of $600 a week would drop by $100, which means it would fully go away once the unemployment rate drops below 5%. Now, the CARES Act also extended how long you would get unemployment for by 13 weeks and gave self-employed people the opportunity to sign up. This new act would extend that extension by 52 weeks if the unemployment rate is over 8.5%, by 39 weeks if the unemployment rate is between 7.5 and 8.5, by 26 weeks if the rate is between 6.5 and 7.5, and by 13 weeks if the rate is between 5.5 and 6.5. It's clear that Congress is hopeful that we can get back to an unemployment rate of below 5.5%. Senate Republicans, on the other hand, are still clamoring for the $450 back-to-work bonus, which we're not clear if that back-to-work bonus would also give you $400 if you were on unemployment or if it's only if you go back to work, and how does that affect people who have already gone back to work or who never left work in the first place? Well, let's move on to good news number 2. Good news number 2, Pfizer, a biotech firm in partnership with a biotech firm named BioNTech, a German firm, released positive data on 24 out of 24 patients who received their COVID-19 vaccine out of the lower dose batches. All 24 of them generated, quote, neutralizing antibodies, and they generated those antibodies 2 to 3 times as much as people who have actually had COVID. Once Pfizer officially moves into phase 2 and 3, we'll start getting more insights on how long these antibodies might actually last, the odds of you being able to get reinfected after you either have COVID or the vaccine, and the overall effectiveness of actually getting it. Remember, phase 3 trials are usually the big one, with rather than a dozen people or a few dozen people, volunteers, you actually are talking about dozens of thousands of volunteers, like 40 to 60,000. Now, some people who received higher doses had fevers, but otherwise nobody had any symptoms yet. And so if any of that makes you nervous, remember you always have the opportunity to check out the link for life insurance in the link down below, which you could sign up for in as little as 5 minutes on your phone. Super easy to do. Let's get into good news number 3. The Senate passed the extension of the PPP application window through August 8th by unanimous vote yesterday. Just instantly, boom, made it happen. It goes to show how quickly Congress can act when they're all on the same page. If there's no negotiation needed, they can actually move quite fast. Now, this doesn't actually mean that this is passed yet. We gotta hammer this through the House, and the president has to sign it, although I honestly expect that to happen by Thursday, tomorrow, because tomorrow's the last workday of this week. And the PPP application window did close yesterday. However, Bluevine, which is the company that I recommended you to yesterday, a lot of you have already said, hey, I applied yesterday, I watched your video, which watch it up here, I'll link it down below. I watched your video, I applied, I already got approved. Some of you also got denied. I don't know if you were missing stuff, but they seem to be fast. So consider applying there. They will keep your application, so you're first in line right when that portal opens up again. Heads up, this is not sponsored. I kind of wish I was sponsored by them, but I'm not. I'm only sponsored by my courses in the link down below, which has a coupon code expiring this Saturday, July 4th. By the way, Lauren did post an amazing video reacting to a renovation, by the way. You might want to check that out as well. So anyway, we expect this to go through. It's not law yet, but it is good news because the PPP has been a lifeline for many businesses. Now, bad news number one. The more and more miscellaneous bills we see, the worse it is for the HEROES Act, in my opinion. In my opinion, when I did the State of Stimulus video 3 days ago, I mentioned that the HEROES Act would be the best Trojan horse to get state and local funding through and a boost of pay for essential workers. $13 per hour of a boost up to $5,000 for high-paid individuals and up to $10,000 for lower-paid individuals. That is in the HEROES Act. That is the perfect, easy thing to kind of slide that through because it's not really on the radar right now in terms of being cut. As in, if the HEROES Act passes, it would just slide through probably without amendment. However, the more and more we see these sort of miscellaneous bills, like the bill I mentioned adjusting the unemployment program differently from how the HEROES Act handles it, there is a risk that we won't see that benefit for heroes, which is very devastating. Instead, right now, the focus in Capitol Hill seems to be on stimulus checks. That's round number 2, the $600 boost with a potential mix of this back to work boost, some kind of boost between $400 to $600, and the EIDL and PPP program. Bad news number 2, and this is really just removing potential good news, so I don't really expect this to be really bad news, since this is, well, kind of expected. Mitch McConnell said the Democrats' infrastructure bill, along with the White House, would be dead on arrival. We've heard this before. That's the Democrat $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that would have been great for companies like Tesla and Nikola, which I guess Tesla probably doesn't need any more good news given that it is up another 5% today. It's now over $1,120 per share. Anyway, there's our news for today. If you liked this roundup, please consider subscribing. If more news breaks, I will be back later in the day. Probably got a real estate video coming out later today as well. So stay tuned, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you, and we will see you soon.